We're going to review how to use pipettes to measure different volumes when you're doing an experiment. And the three types of micropipettors we'll be talking about are a P20, a P200, and a P1000. So some of the most important things to know before you start to measure a volume out is how to choose a pipette, how to set the pipette, and then how to use it correctly to measure the appropriate volume. Okay? So the name of the pipette refers to the largest volume it can measure. So for example, a P20 can measure 20 microliters, a P200 can measure 200 microliters, and a P1000 can measure 1000 microliters, which you know is the same as 1 milliliter. Okay? So any volume over 1000 milliliters, and you'll have to use other pipettes. So these are the types of pipettes you'll use for volumes over 1 milliliter. And then we have a range of micropipettors that we can use to measure P20, P1000, and P200. Okay? So each of these pipettors has 3 numbers on the side, as illustrated here by these 3 boxes. So it's important to know how to set each pipette. So for a P20, 20 microliters will look like 2, 0, 0. So that last box is actually the 10th place. Okay? A P200 will read 2, 0, 0, and that's 200. And a P1000 will read 1, 0, 0 for 1000 microliters. And you should never set your pipetter above these volumes. Okay? Each pipetter can measure a volume down to about 1/10 of its maximum. So for a P20, you'll use it to measure 2 to 20 microliters. P200, you'll use it to measure 21 to 200 microliters. And a P1000, you can use to measure 100 to 1000 microliters. Okay? So when you're choosing a pipette, it's important to pick the smallest pipette with which you can pipette the volume 1 time. So if we want to measure 900 microliters, it's more accurate to measure it in 1 volume using the P1000 than it is to set your P200 to 100 and pipette the volume 9 times. Okay? So let's say we are going to measure out 150 microliters. Which pipette should we use? Well, this falls in the range of a P200, and in order to set it correctly, the side of the pipetter should read 150. Okay? So let me set that. In order to set the pipette, with these blue pipette men, we turn the black knob. So there are what we call different stops with the plunger. So if you press gently down, you'll feel it stop 1 time and you can press it past that. It's very important to understand what each of those stops does. So if we put a properly sized tip on our pipetter. So in order to measure a volume, we want to push the plunger down to the first stop. Then we'll insert our pipette tip into the liquid and raise the plunger slowly. To expel the volume then, we'll push it slowly down to the first stop and then all the way down. And then we pull the tip out and then we can release our thumb. Okay? So let me show you what this looks like. So we have this blue liquid and I'm pushing the plunger down to the first stop and then I insert the tip into the liquid, raise it slowly back up, and I make sure that I see the liquid stop moving. Make sure there's no liquid on the outside of your pipette tip. And then in order to expel the liquid, I push the plunger slowly back down to the first stop and then all the way out. Okay? So you'll notice that some liquids are quite viscous and you'll need to raise the plunger especially slowly. And also when you release the liquid out, you'll have to push the plunger back down extremely slowly. Okay, so let's try this. Let's say we're going to do 500 microliters. So to measure 500 microliters, we'll use the P1000, and the side of the pipetter should read 0, 5, 0. Just like that. Okay. So the P1000 uses a larger pipette tip. And again, we will push our finger down to the first stop, put our pipette tip into the liquid, raise it very slowly up until we see the liquid stop rising in the tip. And then we can slowly push the plunger back down to release the liquid and then push it all the way down. Okay. Now to release the tip, there's this small white button on the side, and that will take the tip off your pipetter. Okay. Let's just check our pipette choosing a couple more times. So what if we wanted to measure 50 microliters? Which pipetter would we use? We'd use the P200. And then what would the numbers read on the side of the pipetter? They should read 0, 5, 0 to measure 50 microliters. What if we wanted to measure 18.3 microliters? Which pipetter would we use? We'd use the P20. And what would the numbers on the side of the pipetter read? They would read 1, 8, 3. Remember, for the P20, that last number is the 10th place. What if we wanted to measure 201 microliters? Which pipetter would we use? We would use the P1000. And what would the side of the pipetter read? Well, it would read 0, 2, 0. And then you'll notice that there are other lines in between 0 and 1. So you would put it in between 0 and 1 to get your 2, 0, 1. Okay, so there's smaller subdivisions between the numbers in that last section. So make sure to take a look at your pipettes so you can see these differences between the numbers. Some of these numbers will be red to help you remember what the maximum or minimum numbers are that you can measure. And then practice pushing that plunger down to the first stop all the way, and practice the motion you need to pipette a volume up. So remember, down to the first stop, raise it slowly, put it into the container you're going to put the volume into, push the plunger down slowly, and then push the plunger all the way down to get the last little bit of volume out. Okay?